My mother, Clara, sacrificed everything to raise me after my father, Henry's, death. Then my wife, Sophie, forced me to choose between them and hid her pregnancy until she miscarried. My father passed away from a sudden heart attack a few months before I, 36M, was born. For context, my mother, 61F, and Henry had a tough life. Both grew up in foster care, bouncing from home to home. They never had a real family, so they were everything to each other. After Henry died, Clara was all I had. Clara worked incredibly hard to provide for us. She was a seamstress, and a good one too. She could make anything from dresses to curtains, but good work wasn't always steady, so she also took on extra jobs. She'd clean houses during the day, and sometimes work evenings at a local diner washing dishes. I remember our small apartment. It was just 2 rooms, but Clara always kept it tidy. She'd often work late into the night, sewing under a single lamp while I slept in the other room. I'd wake up sometimes and see her hunched over her sewing machine, her face tired but determined. We didn't have much, but I never felt like I was missing out. Clara made sure I always had decent clothes, even if hers were old and patched. She always made sure I had enough to eat, even if it meant she had a smaller portion. She never complained, never let me see her struggle. She always had a smile for me. She was doing her best. When I was about 15, I told Clara I wanted to get a part-time job after school. I wanted to help out, buy some groceries, maybe even save up for a better place. She got really quiet, and for the first time I ever saw, she got truly angry with me. Her voice was firm, almost shaking. She told me absolutely not. She said my only job was to study, to get good grades, to make something of myself. She said education was the only way out of our situation. She wanted me to have options she never had. She also insisted that I volunteered. She told me I would have to start being a man and taking care of others. I met Sophie, my now wife, 35F, during my final year of university. Sophie's family life was different. Her parents were wealthy, but they were distant, always busy with their own lives. She often talked about feeling like an afterthought in her own home. When she met Clara, she was instantly drawn to her warmth. They connected quickly. Sophie would come over to our little apartment, and they'd spend hours talking, laughing, and cooking together. There was a time I made a joke, saying she enjoyed her company more than mine. We laughed about it at the time. After we had been dating for about a year, Sophie started to get a little uncomfortable with how often I called Clara. I called her every day, usually in the evening, just to check in, see how her day was. It wasn't a long call, maybe 10 or 15 minutes. Sophie felt it was a bit much. She said we were building our own life, and it felt like I was still too attached to my mother. We talked about it, and I tried to explain that it was just my way of showing I cared. I cut back the calls to every other day, and it seemed to satisfy her, at least for a while. A few years later, I managed to save enough money to put a down payment on a small house. It was a surprise for Clara's birthday. I had always dreamed of giving her a proper home, a place where she could finally relax. When I told Sophie about the house before I told Clara, she wasn't happy. She thought we should be saving for our own future, for a wedding, for a house we would live in. She said it felt like I was prioritizing my mother over our relationship. She even went to Clara's apartment and voiced her concerns. Clara, being Clara, just listened patiently and then suggested that maybe when Sophie and I got married, we could live in the house. She said she just wanted me to be happy. I was furious when I found out Sophie had gone behind my back. I told her the house was for Clara, a gift, a thank you for everything she'd done. I told Clara that she didn't have to worry, that she could live in that house for as long as she wanted, rent-free. She could paint the walls any color, plant a garden, anything she wanted. Sophie and I eventually worked things out, or so I thought. We got married a year later. We bought our own place, a comfortable condo in a good neighborhood. We both had decent jobs, and life seemed to be going well. But the issue with Clara never really went away. It was always there, simmering beneath the surface. Then, about 2 months ago, Clara got sick. It was serious. The doctor said she needed constant care. I wanted her to move in with us. Sophie refused. She said it would be too disruptive, that we didn't have the space, that it would put too much strain on our marriage. I couldn't believe she was saying no. We compromised, if you can even call it that. I rented a small apartment for Clara right next door to ours. I paid for it entirely out of my own pocket. Even with that, Sophie was still unhappy. She said it was too much, that I was spending too much time with Clara. I work a regular day job, and then I usually visit Clara from around 6:00 p.m. to 8:00 p.m. On weekends, I try to balance my time. I spend an hour or two with Clara and the rest of the time with Sophie. I try my best to make Sophie happy. I cook her favorite meals. She doesn't even know my favorite food. I got a cleaning lady to come in twice a week, even though we don't really need it. I give her massages, write her little notes, and plan monthly weekend getaways. I pay all our bills, even though she earns a good salary. I tell her to keep her money for herself. I always listen to her when she talks about her day, her interests, her friends. I go to all her social events, but she never comes to any of mine. She doesn't like it. Last week, Sophie gave me an ultimatum. She said I had to choose her or my mother. She said I was too focused on Clara, that I wasn't giving our marriage the attention it deserved. I realized then that this wasn't just about Clara. It was about control. My relationship with my mother was the one thing in my life that Sophie couldn't control. So now I'm here. I'm preparing for a difficult conversation. I'm prepared to set some firm boundaries. I'm prepared for the possibility of divorce. Update 1. I spent a couple of days thinking things through. I knew I couldn't and wouldn't cut my mother out of my life. I asked Sophie if there was anything else bothering her, anything beyond the situation with Clara. She insisted there wasn't, so I told her I wanted a divorce. I said we clearly had different priorities, different values. I said I couldn't be with someone who didn't understand the importance of family. Sophie was stunned. She just froze, her face completely blank. She didn't say a word. I told her I was especially hurt by her lack of support during Clara's illness. I told her it showed a lack of empathy that I couldn't ignore. I packed a bag and went to stay at a hotel. I needed some space to think. The next day, I went to visit Clara. She could tell something was wrong, but I didn't tell her about the separation. I didn't want to worry her. She's fragile right now. Clara then surprised me. She told me Sophie had been visiting her every day, every single day since she moved into the apartment next door. This was completely unexpected. The woman who wanted me to spend less time with my mother was now visiting her constantly. Clara said Sophie would just sit with her, talk to her, sometimes help her with small tasks. I started to see things a little differently. I realized Sophie's actions were a way to get close to Clara. I remembered Sophie telling me about her childhood. Her mom would always tell her that she was an unwanted kid, a burden. She would say she wished she never had her. Sophie calls Clara mom. She would always correct herself after, but it would slip out. When Sophie got sick, she didn't go to her own mother. She came to mine. It used to bother me, but then I understood. It was her way of seeking that mother-daughter bond she never had. I knew Sophie's intentions were different. She was trying to find a mother figure. Clara also used to run a small foster home when I was younger. We'd have kids staying with us for weeks, sometimes months at a time. Every year, Clara would take all of us, including Sophie, on a 2-week vacation. Sophie always seemed a little jealous of the attention Clara gave to the foster kids. This put a lot of things into perspective. I went back to our condo that evening. Sophie was there. She looked terrible. Her eyes were red and puffy, like she'd been crying for hours. She was curled up on the bathroom floor, still in her clothes. She just cried for a long time. She'd calm down a little, then start sobbing again. I just sat there next to her, not saying anything. I didn't try to comfort her, but I didn't leave either. After a couple of hours, she finally spoke. She said she never actually wanted me to spend less time with my mother. She admitted she was jealous of their relationship. She confessed she felt like she was competing with Clara and even the foster kids for Clara's affection. She said she knew it was irrational. She said she wished more than anything that she had been Clara's daughter instead of my wife, but she added she loved me deeply. She then told me that I was emotionally distant. She said that only Clara was able to reach me. I was shocked. For a moment, I thought, is she crazy? But I just listened. Sophie fell asleep in my arms. Eventually, I carried her to bed and tucked her in. I slept in the guest room. The next morning, she acted like everything was normal. I don't expect you to feel sorry for me, she said. I told her I did not feel pity. I felt love. I went back to the hotel. Update 2, I spent a lot of time thinking about my own childhood. We moved around a lot when I was a kid. Between the ages of about 5 and 15, I counted once. We lived in over 40 different places. Apartments, temporary shelters, even a couple of weeks in our car. I realized I developed a kind of detachment, a way of not getting too attached to any one place or any one person except Clara. I realized I might have been doing the same thing in my marriage. I thought I was fully committed, but maybe I was still holding back, still keeping a part of myself separate. I started thinking about therapy, not just for Sophie, but for myself. Maybe we could work through this, but we both needed help. Then, a few days later, I got a call from the hospital. Sophie was there. They wouldn't tell me anything over the phone, just that I needed to come immediately. When I got there, the nurses wouldn't let me see her at first. She was refusing to see me. Her eyes, when she looked at me, they were filled with such anger. I've never seen her like that. I managed to convince one of Sophie's close friends to go in and talk to her. Her friend came out a few minutes later, looking shaken. She told me to call Clara. I called Clara, and she told me something that Sophie had kept secret. Sophie had been pregnant. Clara had known for a while, but Sophie had asked her not to tell me. My mother broke down on the phone. I went back to see Sophie. This time, she let me in. She told me she had lost the baby. She blamed me. She said the stress of the past few weeks had caused it. She explained that she hadn't told me about the pregnancy because she wanted to see if I could handle the responsibility of caring for Clara and managing our life. She wanted to see if I could truly be there for her and a child. I didn't know what to say. I was furious that she'd kept it a secret, thrilled at the thought that I was going to be a dad, heartbroken that we'd lost the baby, and confused about everything. I hated her. I just kept thinking of all of the things she had kept from me. We couldn't even talk. Update 3. Sophie is back home now. I'm taking care of her, but we're not talking. Not really. I started seeing a therapist. He told me to be patient, to give Sophie time to grieve, to not make any rash decisions while we were both dealing with so much emotion. I've been taking care of Sophie as best as I can. I try to be gentle with her. She seems so fragile, like she could break at any moment, but her mental state has been getting worse. She talks to herself a lot. Sometimes she acts like she's still pregnant. She'll cradle her stomach and hum softly. One night, I woke up to find her staring at me. Her eyes were wide and unfocused. She called me by her father's name. She said I was going to hurt her. I called an ambulance. Sophie was admitted to the hospital. She's been there for 6 weeks now. The doctors have diagnosed her with borderline personality disorder. They also suspect she has a delusional disorder. They've told me they strongly suspect she suffered severe abuse as a child, but they can't tell me much more than that. Sophie refuses to see any visitors, especially her family. She suggested we communicate through letters. The letters have been eye-opening. I've learned more about her in these past 2 months than I did in the 10 years we were together. She wrote about her volunteer work. She didn't just donate money. She traveled to different countries, helping to build schools and wells, She wrote about small acts of kindness, like helping a stranger catch a train even though it meant she missed her own. People who knew her described her as an incredibly generous and resourceful person. She also wrote about our early days together. She remembered how we used to love taking public transport, even though we could have afforded taxis. She recalled times when we had almost no money, but we were happy just being together. We'd challenge each other to travel across the city without spending a dime, just to see if we could do it. She wrote that she thought nothing could break us. She and I also wrote about what made the relationship change. She took responsibility for what she did. She apologized, really apologized, for how she treated me and Clara. She admitted she made a lot of mistakes. She said she understood if I wanted a divorce. She said it was the only logical outcome. She said she needed to get better, to work on herself. She said it wasn't fair to me and that she had a long way to go before she could be a good partner to anyone. She also said that if someday she did get better, and if I hadn't moved on, maybe we could try again. I suggested a separation instead of a divorce. I told her we could revisit the issue in a year. If we both still felt the same way, we'd get divorced. If we thought there was a chance for a healthy relationship, we'd start over, get to know each other again, learn to communicate in a new way. She agreed. She said it was what she had secretly hoped for. Update 4. Sophie was discharged from the hospital. She refused to see me. She said she needed to stay focused on her recovery, and seeing me would make it too hard. I understood. I'm still working through my own anger and hurt. We're still writing letters to each other. It's surprisingly effective. It feels safer somehow. Clara saw Sophie. Clara told her that she still loved her, that she would always be there for her, no matter what. Clara said Sophie didn't have to compete for her love. She already had it. Sophie asked me if I minded if she kept in touch with Clara. I told her it was up to them, not me. I've moved to Berlin. Clara needed specialized medical treatment, and one of the best hospitals in the world for her condition is here. I've been here for almost a month now. I'm learning to delegate at work. It's hard! I'm used to doing everything myself, just like Clara always did. I'm still seeing my therapist in France once a week. I travel back. I don't want to change. I'm also making time for myself. It's helpful. One of my foster brothers came to Berlin with me. It's good to have him here. I'm feeling better. Slowly. I was thinking about my childhood again the other day. We lived in so many different places, mostly cheap apartments and hotels. We relied on government assistance because Clara was a single parent. I remember times when men would offer Clara a place to stay in exchange for favors. I was just a kid, but I understood what was happening. One time, we were staying at the apartment of a man who worked for a social services agency. He was supposed to be helping us find a permanent home. He made a move on Clara after dinner. She refused. He told us to get out. We had to leave right then and there. We went back to the run-down hotel we'd been staying at before, but our room was gone. Someone else was in it. We had nowhere to go. We ended up sleeping in a park that night. It was cold and damp. I remember Clara holding me tight, trying to keep me warm. A group of men, I think they were coming back from a party, found us. They started harassing Clara, saying awful things. They tried to assault her. I was there. I could see everything, but I was too small, too. They hit me hard, and I couldn't move. Then some other people, also coming home late, heard the commotion. They yelled, and the men ran away. Clara just got up. She didn't cry. She didn't say anything. She just took my hand, and we started walking. She said we needed to find somewhere safer. We never talked about it, ever, for years. I downplayed it in my own mind. I'd tell myself that the man from the agency was almost like Clara's pimp. It was a way to cope, I guess. But it wasn't almost. It was. My mother had to use her body so we could survive. And I was there, and I couldn't protect her. It was Clara's money that let me start my own company. She gave me everything she has ever saved. I want to talk to Clara about it, but I don't know if I should. It's her trauma, not mine. I don't know if bringing it up after all these years would help her or hurt her. Clara's health is getting better, slowly but surely. The treatment in Berlin seems to be working. The future is uncertain, but it's not as bleak as it was a few months ago. I want to thank everyone on Reddit who commented and sent me messages. Your support meant a lot, especially during those first few weeks. It helped to know I wasn't alone. I hope that whatever you have left to live is better than what you have already lived.